What if I told you that Albert Wesker had that dog in him? They say a story is only as good as its villain, and nothing in the Resident Evil franchise has come quite close to the top G that was Albert Wesker. I'm gonna ask that if you enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Albert Wesker was a test subject for Project W for children that contained potential super genes that would breed a new race of human. He would later go on to help development of the T-virus and later betray Umbrella to third-party organizations who wanted Umbrella's research, and after injecting himself with an experimental virus, he gained superhuman abilities and began his mission to move humanity into its next stage with extreme eugenics that it made the Mustache Man soil himself. He wielded his power like a kid who just found his father's gun. Astounding. In his free time, he'd smack up Chris's sister and brainwash his girlfriend, all while finding the time to have a kid and spend time with his side piece, Alexa. Dude was the original city boy. In a series that spans over 30 entries with 10 games in the main series alone, why is it that we still can't get over Albert Wesker even over a decade after his departure from the series? And what can Capcom do to keep him in the spotlight again after the Resident Evil 4 remake? We've seen so many villains attempt to fill this void that Wesker left. Some were amazing, some were great, and some were just, what the actual fuck is this guy's malfunction? Why were none of them able to compete with the city boy of Resident Evil, Albert Wesker? Why is it the only villain people really associate with Resident Evil is Wesker? Well, I'll tell you why, bud. Because it's not just his glasses or that Hyperborean stare in his eyes or his lust for complete global saturation. It's much more than that. For starters, the cast of all the Resident Evil games are all really well-trained and highly capable soldiers, and Wesker was extremely powerful and gave a lot of these characters a run for their money. Chris Redfield was a pilot in the army, the best shot in stars, and is strong enough to punch literal boulders with his face, and Wesker completely humiliated him on multiple occasions, and it seemed after a while his main motivation was just to torment Chris, and we all lived for it. He tried to kill his entire unit in Resident Evil 1, most of which were his close friends and colleagues. As mentioned before, he smacked up his sister on Rockford Island, he brainwashed and kidnapped his girlfriend, and got away with it pretty much every time. And this is what was key to making Wesker so memorable. His villainy wasn't contained to a single game. Wesker's lore and character was built up across multiple games as he tormented us constantly. Even if he had a smaller role and wasn't necessarily the main villain of the entry, you knew shit was gonna go down when he showed up because he was the villain of the series, not the game. He was the overseeing eye piecing all the events together. He was the overarching story, which Resident Evil has not had since Resident Evil 5. 6's story is completely all over the place, but credit where it's due, they had some build-up with Jake's character carrying the torch of Wesker, then that all went away, and then they started the Winter story, and then they changed the main villain to Evelyn, but then Evelyn isn't the main villain, it's actually Mother Miranda, who dies in the first game. She's introduced, with no prior mention to her in any of the other games. And that's the biggest issue too. Mother Miranda was a powerful villain and had a lot of potential, only to be killed off before she could even breathe. Until Capcom fixes this problem, Resident Evil will still always make decent games, but it will always struggle to find an overarching story that's going to keep people invested. I think it would be integral to the franchise to remake Code Veronica before 5 to reintroduce Wesker properly, and not turn him into a once-off character like the rest of the villains, which they seem to be sailing towards. Wesker will not work in a single game. Do not make this mistake, Capcom. You have a lot of new fans that need to understand the complexity of this character, and you can't pull off a Welcome to Raccoon City and stuff the lore of multiple games into a single entry. It will simply not work. Do you guys think Albert Wesker should come back in a main timeline full time? Let me know in the comments, and remember to subscribe for more if you enjoyed this video.